Welcome back, fellow seekers of the macabre. Tonight we dive deep into the chilling story of a nun whose dark secrets have left a mark on this world, and the next. This is a tale where silence speaks, shadows whisper, and the veil between life and death is torn apart. Hold on tight, for this is the haunting story of the nun they called Sister Amelia. In the small village of Varenville, nestled in the fog-drenched mountains, there lay an ancient convent known for its tranquility. But all that changed when a young woman, Amelia, sought refuge behind its stone walls. The convent welcomed her, unaware of the darkness she carried within. Sister Amelia was quiet, reserved, her eyes always downcast. But behind those eyes lay a secret that would shatter the sanctity of the convent. Amelia had taken the holy vows to escape a haunting past, one marred by whispers of forbidden rituals and an unspeakable pact made in desperation. The other nuns felt something strange about her, how shadows seemed to cling to her, how the air grew colder in her presence. At night, Sister Amelia would pray longer than anyone else, her whispers echoing through the empty halls. Late one night, Sister Agnes was awoken by the sound of muffled cries. The sobbing seemed to drift from the old chapel, a place where no one ventured after dark. Drawn by an unseen force, Agnes followed the sound. Her footsteps light, her breath held. Agnes saw a figure, shrouded in black, kneeling in front of the altar. The air was thick with the scent of incense. And something else, a coppery scent that filled her lungs and tightened her throat. Agnes steps closer. The figure rises, turning to reveal Sister Amelia, her eyes glistening with tears, face pale, and a haunting smile playing on her lips. Her hands are covered in blood. Sister Amelia yelled at her, saying, "Do you hear them, Sister Agnes? The voices, they speak to me. They tell me secrets, they tell me, you do too." Sister Agnes was left shaken, her mind replaying the events of the night. She knew something terrible had happened, something tied to Amelia's dark past. In her search for answers, she approached the Mother Superior, a woman whose wisdom was matched only by the shadows in her eyes. Mother Superior concluded that Amelia is not who she seems. She is connected to the old legend of this convent, a legend of betrayal, of a pact made with the forces of darkness. There is an ancient book, hidden in the deepest part of the library, that may hold the answers. The Book of Shadows revealed a chilling tale. Centuries ago, a nun of this very convent had made a deal with a malevolent spirit to gain forbidden knowledge. In return, she offered her soul, and the souls of any who followed her, binding their fates to the convent forever. Agnes turns a page to see an illustration of the nun performing a ritual at the very altar of their chapel. She realizes with horror that history is repeating itself, and Amelia is the key. Sister Amelia said, smiling coldly, "I knew you would come, Sister Agnes. They told me you would. Tonight, we will finish what was started long ago. Tonight, the darkness will claim us all." Amelia begins to chant, and the shadows in the chapel grow darker, more oppressive. The candles flicker and go out, leaving only the light of the moon. The air grows cold and the sobbing from before returns, now joined by the cries of countless souls. Agnes felt the darkness closing in, the weight of centuries pressing down on her. But she knew she couldn't let the cycle continue. Clutching her rosary, she stepped forward into the circle, chanting the prayers of protection she had learned in her youth. Agnes's voice grows louder, more confident. The shadows begin to recede, the air warms, and the cries grow fainter. Sister Amelia shrieks, falling to the ground as if struck by an unseen force. The darkness around her dissipates, and the chapel is filled with a blinding light. Amelia collapses, her body dissolving into the shadows, which vanish into the floor. Agnes is left standing alone in the chapel, the Book of Shadows clutched to her chest. The darkness had been driven away, but the cost was high. Sister Amelia was gone, her fate sealed by the choices of the past. The convent would carry on, its secrets buried deeper, its halls once again silent. But Sister Agnes knew that the darkness was never truly gone, only waiting, hidden in the shadows, whispering to those who dared to listen. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the darkness. What do you think happened to Sister Amelia? Will the convent ever truly be free of its haunting past? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Deep in the heart of the countryside, the ancient bell of Saint Dymphna Convent tolled, its somber notes echoing through the valley. The sound carried a sense of foreboding, as if the stone walls themselves whispered secrets from centuries past. It was under this ominous chime that Sister Marguerite arrived, stepping out of a modest car, a small suitcase clutched tightly in her trembling hand. She gazed up at the towering Gothic spires and weathered stone walls of the convent, knowing this remote sanctuary would be her new home, a place of refuge, a chance at redemption. But she had no idea that her arrival was just the beginning of something far darker. As Marguerite made her way up the worn stone steps, she was greeted by Mother Superior Beatrice, a stern figure whose lined face betrayed no emotion. Mother Superior welcomed her with a voice as cold and rigid as the convent's stone walls, acknowledging that they had been expecting her. Marguerite, struggling to maintain her composure, murmured her thanks, though her mind was far from the present. She could still hear the screeching of tires, the shattering of glass, and see the small, lifeless hand in hers, a memory that had haunted her ever since that tragic night. Inside, the convent was dimly lit, the air thick and oppressive, as if it held the weight of centuries of sorrow. The heavy oak doors closed behind them, sealing Marguerite into a world that felt both sacred and suffocating. Mother Superior Beatrice led her through the shadowed corridors, explaining that she would be sharing a room with Sister Elizabeth, who would help her adjust to the convent's way of life. As they walked, Marguerite couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The eyes of the other nuns seemed to follow her, their gazes lingering with an emotion she couldn't quite place. Was it curiosity, pity, or perhaps something far more sinister? Marguerite's new roommate, Sister Elizabeth, was a kind and soft-spoken woman who welcomed her warmly. Elizabeth helped Marguerite unpack her meager belongings and patiently explained the daily routine of prayers, chores, and contemplation. For the first time in a long while, Marguerite felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe here, among these women devoted to a higher purpose, she could finally find the peace that had eluded her. But even as she settled into bed that first night, unease crept into her mind. In the darkness, Marguerite heard a faint whisper, so soft it could have been imagined. She sat up, peering around the room, but saw nothing amiss. Sister Elizabeth slept soundly in the bed across from her. Convincing herself it was just the wind or a trick of her tired mind, Marguerite lay back down. She had no way of knowing that this was just the beginning, that the whispers would soon grow louder, more insistent, invading her dreams and waking moments alike. Days turned into weeks, and Marguerite immersed herself in the convent's routines, trying to ignore the growing unease that gnawed at her. Shadows seemed to move at the corner of her vision, cold spots would appear in the warmest rooms, and the sensation of being watched never left her. It was as if the very walls of the convent held secrets they were desperate to share. Then, one night, everything changed. Marguerite woke to the sound of singing. It was a low, mournful melody that seemed to call to her very soul. Mesmerized, she rose from her bed, her bare feet silent on the cold stone floor, and followed the haunting tune through the darkened halls. The song led her to a part of the convent she had never seen before, to a faded tapestry of Saint Dymphna that concealed an ancient door. With a sense of both dread and fascination, Marguerite pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. As she descended, the air grew colder, and the scent of age and decay filled her nostrils. At the bottom of the stairs, she found herself in a vast underground crypt lined with stone sarcophagi. In the center of the crypt stood a black stone altar, and upon it lay a massive leather-bound book, its cover marked with strange, writhing symbols. As Marguerite approached, the singing ceased, replaced by a silence so profound it pressed against her eardrums. With trembling hands, Marguerite opened the book, its pages filled with spidery writing. The ink faded to a brownish red that looked unsettlingly like dried blood. The terrible truth of Saint Dymphna Convent's darkest secret began to unfold before her eyes. Centuries ago, a young nun named Sister Catherine had lived within these walls, gifted or cursed with the power of prophecy. Her visions had begun as divine inspiration, but had grown dark and terrifying, predicting plagues, wars, and untold calamities. Fearing demonic possession, the other nuns had turned against her, their fear and jealousy driving them to commit a horrific act. On a night much like this one, they had dragged Catherine to this crypt, her pleas for mercy ignored, and sealed her away in one of the sarcophagi. She had been left to die alone in darkness, her cries echoing unheard through the stone walls. As Marguerite read the final words, a cold wind blew through the crypt, extinguishing the candles and plunging her into darkness. She heard the grating sound of stone against stone, the lid of a sarcophagus slowly sliding open. A pale, ethereal light illuminated the crypt, revealing the ghostly figure of a nun, her habit in tatters, her face twisted in sorrow and rage. It was Sister Catherine, her spirit bound to this place, waiting for someone to hear her story, to right the terrible wrong done to her. As Catherine's ghost drifted toward Marguerite, she felt no fear, only a deep sense of kinship. Both were souls seeking redemption, both burdened by the past. In that moment, Marguerite knew she had to act. When dawn broke, Marguerite emerged from the crypt, the ancient book clutched to her chest, her eyes burning with a new determination. She would reveal the truth, no matter the cost. Sister Catherine would have her justice, and perhaps, in the process, Marguerite would find the peace she so desperately sought. But as she approached the Mother Superior's office, a gnarled hand grasped her wrist. Sister Constance, the eldest of the nuns, stood before her, eyes wide with fear. "Some secrets," she whispered, her voice trembling, "are meant to stay buried." Marguerite realized then that the battle for truth had only just begun, and Saint Dymphna Convent held far more secrets than she could ever have imagined.